The Jobava London System, also known as the Rapport Jobava system, is one of the most powerful opening ever created. It's super perfect, it's a super perfect weapon for players who don't want to memorize tons of opening theory. The opening is super flexible, super aggressive, full of tactical ideas, tricky moves, and your opponent can blunder again and again. The Jobava London system is a d4 opening, so d4 for white, d5, knight c3, knight f6, and bishop f4. This is the standard setup, the initial setup for the Jobava London system. You can arrive in this position with a different move orders, but this is the first step. One of the most logical moves for black in this position can be c5, but with c5 sometimes you can easily win the game immediately, because you can play just c3, defending the d pawn, because the idea of c5 is taking the d4 pawn, but now you're defending the d4 pawn. But here, as you can see, the second main move on chess.com is knight c6, but with knight c6 white can easily win the game, because after knight c6 you can play knight b5, and the idea of knight b5 is going to attack the c7, because as you can see, two pieces now are defending c7 or attacking c7, and if your knight can jump on c7, he can attack the opponent king, he can also attack the opponent rook, and you can get an advantage at move number 6. But here you can say, okay, but your opponent can play queen a5. You can just simply play c3, and the idea is the same, because if your opponent, for example, play e5 because he wants to destroy your center, he wants to distract your bishop, you can just simply play bishop take, and if your opponent take with the knight, you can just simply take here, and that's pretty fine because you are in advantage. But here, if your opponent play a simple e6, so he don't play knight c6, but if he play e6, you can just simply play again knight b5, because the idea is the same, going to attack the c7 square. But here your opponent can defend, he can play knight a6. But as you can see, this position, it's a little bit strange because your opponent didn't develop the knight in a correct square, and you can just continue to attack. You can play, for example, c3, your opponent can play bishop e7 because he wants to castle, and you can go on a4. Bishop on d7, knight f3, castle, and bishop d3. And here everything is fine for white. This is more like an entire game than just a simple opening, but let's see what happened again if your opponent played c5. You can play e3 again, and if your opponent here played a6 because he want to prevent knight b5, you can just simply take a pawn out. Your opponent can play e6 because now he can take the pawn back, he can defend d5 too, so you can just simply develop the piece. Knight f3, bishop take, and you develop the other bishop, bishop on d3. The opponent can play knight c6, castle for you, castle for your opponent too. e4, try to take and destroy the opponent center, this good setup for opponent pawns. If your opponent take, you can just take with the knight. Knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, and here the opponent can play something like h6 because he want to play g5. But here you can play bishop takes e6, pawn takes e6, knight on e5. Queen f6, attacking the bishop, because if you remove the bishop, he can just simply take the knight. That's why you have to play bishop on g3, and your opponent can play rook on d8, attacking your queen, and taking also the control of the d file. Queen on h5, bishop on b7, seems natural, connecting the rooks, but as you can see, that's a clear mistake. You can just simply play bishop on h4, because as you can see, you're attacking the opponent queen, and if the queen move, for example, on b5, you can just simply take the rook. So that's why he can think he has to play something like g5. But as you can see, and as you know, you can play knight g4, and you're attacking the opponent queen. The queen has to move, and it probably go on g6. You can take the queen, and you can win a pawn, and as you can see, the opponent pawn structure is extremely bad because now he has to move the king, and you can take another pawn, and that's super fine for white, then can win this game extremely easy. Instead of play c5, your opponent can play immediately e6. But here there is another crazy tactic, because you can just simply play e3, your opponent here can play bishop on d6 because he wants to attack your bishop. And if you take, he can just simply play c takes d5 and he can take the full control of the center. But here, that's why you have not to take the bishop. You have to play a strange move, knight on f3. Your opponent probably will take your bishop because he can double your pawn. You have not the full control of the center because your e pawn now is on the f file. But here what's happened? Your opponent probably can play something like b6 because since no develop the bishop on the b7 square, and you can play knight on e5. You can take the full control with the knight. Castle for your opponent, and you can go on f3 with the queen. Bishop on a6, for example, because you want to trade your bishop, because if you take, your opponent can take your bishop. So you have not to take the bishop again. You have to play long castle. Strange move. Queen c8 for defending the bishop. And here you can play g4, starting to attack the opponent king. Bishop on b7, bishop on d3, c5, and you can play g5. If your opponent don't play knight e4, that is the main move, but with knight e4, white is still winning. But if you, for example, go back on d7, you can play bishop take h7. If your opponent take, there is an immediate strong attack with this rook on d3. The idea is going on h3 and checkmate the opponent. Another idea can be c6, defending the d5 pawn. But you can just simply play e3, same idea, bishop on f5, so similar to white opening. White can play immediate f3. e6, g4, bishop needs to go back, and you can start to push the pawn, because if your opponent castle on this side, you push all the pawns on that side, and you can do a super good attack on that way. Your opponent can play h6 here because he don't want to lose the bishop, and you can play bishop on d3. Bishop take, queen on b6, and you can just simply play knight e2, because the idea is playing the king on f2, probably play something like the other rook on g1, start to take the opponent king. But here, if your opponent take on b2, you can just simply play rook b1, queen h3, and rook take on b7. And here is super fine because white take the 7th rank, so that's pretty good for white, this position, of course. If your opponent play e6 again, you can start to play e3. If your opponent play bishop e7 because he want to castle immediately, you can play knight f3. Bishop on d7, he can castle, but he can also play knight d7, for example, knight e5, attacking the opponent bishop. c5, and here knight take d7. Seems not so good, but you remove the bishop pair of your opponent, and I think that's super good for white anyway. Queen take d7, and if your opponent take the knight with the queen, there is a crazy tactic, because you can play bishop take b8, rook take b8, and bishop b5, and you can win the opponent queen. And if you think that someone I graded cannot blunder, now I show you a game that has been played from Karyakin, that was white, and a 2400 player that was black. Here the move order was different because he played g6 previously and the last move was d5, but it's like the same if he played g6 now. Because Karyakin played e3, the opponent played the bishop on g7, h4, and here black blunder because he played knight bd7. As you can see, white can again play knight b5 and he can attack the pawn because black cannot stop that one. Black in the game played castle, and after bishop here, queen back, bishop on h2, queen there, and he just developed the piece, and here white is in a completely win position. As I told you, sometimes there are some different transpositions or different options, and one of them if your opponent play g6 instead of play d5. In this position, if your opponent play bishop on g7, you can play e4 because you can take the full control of the center, and if your opponent castle, that's fine. You can just continue with e5, attacking the opponent knight. The opponent knight sometimes can go on e8, it can go on h5, and for example, this one that seems logical, attacking your bishop, it's not. Because you can play bishop on d2, your opponent probably can play something like c5, trying to destroying your d pawn and taking the other one next move. But here you can play g4, you can attack the opponent knight, and as you can see, knight is trapped. If your opponent take, you can just simply play knight d2, and because you have to cover all the possibilities that your opponent can, where your opponent can play the knight. If your opponent play knight c6, you can just take the knight and you are a piece up and you can win easily the game. I hope guys you enjoyed seeing some lines with the Jobava London. Of course, there are a lot of theory behind this opening, but I just show you some ideas, some lines, and I hope you will start to win many games with this opening. Guys, thanks me in the description if you know some other games that has been played by top GMs or famous players, and see you at the next video.